Hello, good people, and welcome to the Higher Living Podcast. This is episode 12, and it's hard to believe that we were already on 12 episodes. What's even harder to believe is that our guest today is actually on air with us in studio. We've got Dr. Riaz Motara. I'm not even going to try to do an injustice to Dr. Motara by doing an introduction for him like I do with some of my other guests. I'm going to leave the introduction to Riaz, who I think is going to spend the next hour with us and give us an overview of his practice, his life, and now his latest passion, which is digital medicine and using technology as a catalyst for patients to get healthcare in a more integrated manner that leverages off some of the latest technologies in the world and latest ways of working in the world. It's absolutely fantastic. I've been so excited to have Riaz on the show with me. So without further ado, good afternoon, Dr. Motara. How are you?
Hi, Sean. How are you? Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Thank you so much for making the time. Again, I know how busy you are. And I've been so excited to have you on the show, Riaz. You know, it's not often that I've come across super specialists who are also, by and large, technocrats, if I can put it that way. So it's quite surreal for me to have conversations with you sometimes because it's like I'm talking to an IT person, but I'm actually also talking to a doctor. And it's quite a phenomenal compilation of the skill sets that you have, and I'm just so excited to share with our listeners in terms of your story and how everything has begun and where you're at the moment and how you're transforming the medical industry at the moment. So I mean, Riaz, do you want to take us from the beginning and give us a bit of an overview of who Dr. Riaz Motara is, how your life has morphed over the years, and then how you are now the CEO of a technology company called BrandMend and what you guys do?
Great. Thanks very much, Sean. So just a little bit about my background. I grew up in a little town called Rustenburg, one of 6 kids. My late dad was a teacher. And, he brought us up always saying that he couldn't really leave us anything one day. And the only thing he could give us was a good education, and all 6 kids got an opportunity to study. I studied medicine at Wits, did my undergraduate training there. Spent most of my time at Baragwanath Hospital, which was truly a humbling experience growing up as a doctor. Specialized as a cardiologist and then went on into private practice and have been a cardiologist and a physician now for the past 22 years. But I think 7 or 8 years ago, also realized that, I could only treat 12 to 13 patients a day by spending enough time with them. And how could I take the knowledge that I had and the experience that I had and treat 1 million people a day with what I know? And then found that a lot of the technology that was currently available and being developed at the time could be used to take my expertise to reach those 1 million people a day. And that was a journey that I started 8 years ago and has now evolved into a global solution.
Wow. Yeah, amazing. I just want to take a few steps back, and I often find that people that listen to my podcast and other channels, sometimes if you take it like from a schooling perspective, when people are typically transitioning out of the schooling system and looking at the varsity system, often there's not a lot of thought that goes into the courses that they take and the decisions that they make in that regard. What made you want to be a cardiologist? What made you want to be a doctor first, if I can ask that question?
Yeah, very good question, Sean. When I was in school, I think I was one of those overachievers when it came to sport and academics and doing your best. And I really wasn't sure when I was in matric what I was going to do. And in fact, I decided to do a BSc degree because I wasn't really sure. And I did first year of BSc, and I had a fantastic scholarship in that year, an opportunity. My dad had three kids at university at the time, and it was quite challenging financially. And I applied for the scholarship to do metallurgical engineering. Got the scholarship and was about to do metallurgical engineering, and then thought, well, maybe, medicine is something that interests me. I'm a people's person. I like to be around people, and this is something that I could do. And I applied for medicine in my first year at university and then got accepted, and was then faced with a dilemma. Could my dad fund my education? And I had this amazing scholarship. And that December, part of my scholarship requirements meant that I had to work at a refinery, a platinum refinery in Rustenburg. And I absolutely hated it. And I met the manager of the refinery, was a young engineer from the UK at the time. And I went to sit down with him and I said, this is my dilemma. Should I be doing medicine and follow my heart, or should I be doing engineering? And he said to me, he was in fourth year medical school, and he switched to engineering because he realized that at some point in his career, somebody may die as a consequence of some indecision on his part. And he couldn't live with that, and he decided to do engineering. Anyway, I sat down, I spoke to my dad, we found the finances, and the rest is history, so to speak. I did medicine and almost immediately felt at home with what I was doing.
It seems like, just by what you said, it seems like your dad had a lot of wisdom, and he was in I guess in modern terms, what they would have called your coach at that point in time, your life coach. And it does sound like that you did have some sort of support structures around decision making at that point in time, which a lot of people don't have, contrary to what others believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a time in your life when you get to that stage of where you're not really sure about your future. You're going to have to do something in life to earn an income, to raise a family, to be comfortable in life. And to want to give in a way that's meaningful to everyone. And, my dad, as I said, he was a humble teacher, but, emphasized the need for an education and to move ahead. It was at a time politically in our country where things were uncertain and the future was uncertain. And my dad would sit down with all of us and really emphasized the need for education. And it didn't matter what we studied. We just had to study in his mind to be able to get ahead in life. And I think it's always been that way, that many young children or kids or adolescents, when they, in standard 8 or grade 10 or matric, these days are not sure where to go. And I think it's just, follow your heart, follow your passion, and your need, or our instinctive need to give to the whole.
It's so true, and I think that follow your heart is such an important point, that social media and other, and I'm not the biggest advocate of social media, which most people know, but I think that social media has now created an environment where these young kids follow their wallets. And the follow your wallet it's short-sighted, and it doesn't often provide you with the fulfillment that you get from helping others and providing a service or a product that helps the greater community.
Yeah, I think just, for me personally, Sean, having been in practice and have just seen so many thousands of patients over the years, and having worked at Baragwanath, which I said, was a truly humbling experience for me, means that, instinctively we all know, right, that we are part of something bigger, that although we live with this illusion of separateness, we are all one. And instinctively, all of us, right, doesn't matter what you study or what you do in your daily life, instinctively all of us desire to want to give, right, and to look after our fellow human beings. We are all giving in some way. I mean, this podcast is giving in some way, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so I think for me, when you're young, you sort of don't know that. You don't feel that you energetic. You've got lots of testosterone flowing around in your veins, and you want to do well. You want to drive the fancy car. You want to earn more money. You want to travel the world. And as you age and you get to the age of 35, 40, I think all of us start asking certain key questions of what is our purpose and why are we here?
So true, and so wise, and spot on. And I think it's there that one finds that crossroads in terms of what does the rest of their life look like, in terms of the purpose that we want to unfold and the purpose that we want to fulfill. And like you say, you're 100% correct. In your early 20s, you have no idea what that concept means. But sometimes just trusting the journey. If you're in your 20s and you're trying to get ahead and things are you're finding doors are closing. Sometimes just trusting and believing that you are part of a journey that has got your best interest at heart, and surrendering to that journey and letting the journey unfold is what you need to do.
Yes, and I think, it's tough at that age. But again, I think also when we're young, we not necessarily we don't have to ask these very deep questions of ourselves, Sean. At that stage in your life, you're meant to have fun. You're meant to make mistakes. You're meant to go and do the things all the things without responsibility. And unfortunately, I think, many families and many parents place a lot of or too much responsibility on their kids at too young an age. There's enough time, I believe, to achieve what you're going to achieve and to find your direction in life. And everybody matures, I believe, at different rates. So, girls would mature much faster than boys would, and, guys generally mature much later on, closer to the age of 25 or 28, where many of them will settle down and know their way in terms of what they would like to do. So at that age, I think we're designed to own the world, so to speak, without the responsibility.
So true. So true. Riaz, coming back to your story now. So you then decided that you were going to be a medical doctor. At what point did you make the decision that cardiology was going to be the route that you were going to go down, the specialization?
Right, so, I did my internship and specialization at Baragwanath as a physician. And, when you're young and as a doctor, the hospital was just always so busy. We used to fight for beds to get people admitted. And what you would realize is that many of the patients who came to hospital, right, would stop taking their medication so they could get ill, so they could just come in to have a meal to eat because they were hungry.
Sure.
And we would admit these patients for a few days to the ward, and just so that they could get food to eat.
Sure.
And that was truly, for me, a humbling experience. You had people in extreme poverty, many different illnesses, struggling, and you're a doctor, we were earning meager salaries at the time as interns, but, we already were destined to have a privileged life. And at the same time, you were treating all these patients who were just getting admitted to hospital so that they could have a few meals that they couldn't have at home. And that was truly sort of a humbling experience for me. And I enjoyed the cardiology. I enjoyed working with my hands and being very practical. And, the heart, Sean, is not just a pump. It's also, the seat of all emotion that we experience. When you fall in love and you have that warm, fuzzy feeling in your chest, nobody can really show you where you feel that. And for me, it was linking the emotional side of life with the physical or practical side of having a pump that never stops until we die.
And if it does stop, then you do die.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, cardiology always interests me and fascinates me because it's one of those medical professions where there's also, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I see it is there's also one of these super specialities that has got very little margin of error. So if you're working with somebody's heart, it is such an intricate procedure that if something goes wrong, the chances of fatality are pretty high, which means that over the course of your career, there must have been some really challenging cases and really challenging situations where things didn't go the way you wanted them to go. And then you had the responsibility of your best intentions and the world working in opposites. And then you had this responsibility to convey this message to other people and manage families. And I think that for me, there's that part of the emotional management, if I can put it that way, is so underappreciated from specialists that operate in the industry.
So, that's so true, Sean. With cardiology, and I'll tell you a little story a little bit later, but in cardiology, there's no room for error, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you get called at 2 o'clock in the morning to come and see a patient who's having chest pain in a casualty or has had a heart attack, you can't say, well, admit the patient and I'll see him tomorrow morning and hope for the best, right? You go out immediately. The theater staff are ready. You take the patient in. It's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's just you, the nurse, and the technologist in the theater with the patient and the family outside. And you are in alpha mode. So you purely focused on the patient. You're aware of your surroundings and what's going on around you. But you're totally calm and you communicating to the patient and you do what you have to do and you get the patient stabilized. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, you go home and jump back into bed, hopefully, And that's how we've been trained all along as cardiologists. And this is also has helped me in the way I do things currently, right? I mean, if you have to do something, there's no procrastination about it. This is what I would like to achieve. This is what I have to do. Go ahead, do it and achieve it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And, my first patient that I had with a heart attack when I went into private practice had a massive heart attack. He was one of those patients that was unstable when he came in. And I remember sitting next to his bed the entire night, having to shock his heart almost 17 times that night. Okay? Sure. But couldn't leave his bed because I was afraid that if I went home, he would die. And he ended up spending a month in hospital, recovered, and is still alive today after 23 years. And, the beautiful part of all of that family was just so grateful for the effort and the time that you put into looking after him, that up to this day, every week, they send a meal home for our family.
Shame.
Amazing. And these were really poor people who can't really afford it, but take the time because they're just so grateful. And, that's the part of the job or the job satisfaction that, keeps you going every day.
Yeah, amazing. And you touch on such an important point, because I think for a lot of people, and I also want to now extend this to the corporate world, the complexities of the work that we do, whether it be in a medical profession or in the corporate or as a business owner, can be quite consuming. And have you ever found it challenging to balance that work-home life, get that balance in, right? Because you've still got a family that you need to tend to as well.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was very challenging, Sean. I'm married to a gynecologist. We were in the same class in medical school. We specialized together and we started our careers together. And we had, once we qualified, we had our kids late, but it was tough in the beginning because you get pulled in so many different directions. You have to be in theater, you get called out for emergencies. She was doing many deliveries, and you plan to go out for dinner and you cancel it. Or you plan to go to a kid's birthday party and you can't go, and you're meant to attend your kid's soccer match at school or prize giving, and you're stuck in theater. But that comes with the profession. And fortunately, as I said, you are married to another doctor, and we sort of understood each other's lives and what was needed. I think when you marry, if I was not married to a doctor, I don't think anybody would want to live with me that long.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because, like you say, the conditions that you deal with and the type of patients, there is no time. It is, when you get the call, you need to up and leave. And in terms of kids, how old are your kids at the moment?
So I have a daughter who's in second year university and a son who's just started, who's also in first year university. So we've been through the tough stage of schooling, and they're now young, almost independent adults. And it's sort of freed up a lot of time and, allows us as a family to still interact and have a lot of meaningful interaction.
And are they studying medicine?
No.
Oh yes, that
I mean, I think many doctors' kids go on to become doctors. And we just decided that we would leave it up to them to make the decision of what they would like to study. And my daughter's doing astrophysics, and my son's studying computer science.
Okay, fantastic. And this is such a lovely way to introduce the next topic, which is really your business, BrandMed. Because I mean, we've had in our first conversation. I mean, you mentioned to me that your view and your vision in terms of these digital technologies coming out to the market would mean that the profession of a doctor over the next few years becomes quite limited. And it can be quite limiting. And so maybe before we get into that conversation, do you want to explain to us about, so at what point of your career did you realize that, you want to change your primary focus? And why did you want to do that? And how did BrandMed start?
So for me, I've always, since a very young age, Sean, I've always been entrepreneurial. I liked business, and perhaps that was in my genetics, and always had all these great ideas. But, because of the challenges of being a medical doctor, you just couldn't take it to the next step, or didn't know where to go. And 8 years ago, had a discussion in my head in terms of how do I treat all the patients that need to see me without them having to wait so long to get to see me. And one thing led to another, and started doing research. And then I got invited to speak on BBC's Focus on Africa about a study that was done by the World Health Organization that showed as South Africans we had the highest rate of high blood pressure in the world, but also the worst control rate. And I remember sitting in this interview for almost 45 minutes, and the interviewer kept on asking me, but Dr. Motara, why is it so? Why is it like this in South Africa? And I kept on spewing out things like obesity and salt and diet and lack of exercise. And she said, it's the same all over the world. What makes it so different in South Africa? And I remember leaving that interview feeling highly embarrassed that as a cardiologist, I couldn't really answer that question. And went to that night and started doing the research and realized that, well, we can't monitor people's blood pressure when they're at home. And launched the initial technology solution, which was an app with a smart blood pressure cuff, and you could test your blood pressure at any time, and I could see, or we could see, the readings. And if your blood pressure was dangerously high, in a heart attack or stroke range, it would alarm at an emergency call center. An ambulance would be dispatched to pick you up to prevent that complication from happening. And 8 years ago, it was revolutionary. It was sort of too early for the South African market, and everywhere and every door I knocked on, they said we were just 5 years too early for the South African market. You know? And we kept on developing the solution. And every time somebody said no or locked the door, we just built a new solution or another solution. And today we are probably the largest digital health company on the continent, and it's now going global.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And so what is it? Where has the technology morphed to now? What are you able to do from that blood pressure cuff linked to a sensor? Where are we now?
So we're at a point now, Sean, of where we can screen a patient at home using their phone on their camera. Literally takes a minute, and we can get things like your blood pressure and your heart rate and your oxygen and your mental health parameters. And we can look at all of this without needing any device on your body. Just simply looking into the phone's camera, we get all this information. And
in real time.
In real time, and we give you meaningful insights with what that means. So we've created virtual well-being programs for patients out there. So many people out there don't know what to eat or how much to exercise or how to breathe and what are the different mindfulness techniques. So we've put this all onto a virtual platform as well that's available to patients out there. On the doctor side, we've developed a whole range of technology that allows doctors to work smarter rather than harder. And, once you have access to the clinical data, we built algorithms to interpret that data that literally helps the doctor or tells the doctor what's the best way to treat you to get the best outcome. And then we've developed a number of solutions for the insurance companies or medical aids out there and pharmaceutical companies as well. So it's an end-to-end solution across the entire care continuum that allows for a different way of managing patients. I think perhaps maybe in 3 years' time, we are going to be in an augmented reality environment where you won't necessarily be talking to a human doctor. You may be talking to a digital human or an avatar that looks like a doctor. And you'll be getting all the advice and therapeutic choices that you need from an AI bot or a digital avatar. So things are moving very rapidly in this space. The technology is advancing at such a phenomenal rate, right? That unless all of us in the medical profession actually reimagine ourselves, okay, and change our paradigms, we're going to get left behind.
Absolutely. And it's that concept of dematerialization, industrial dematerialization, similar to the taxi industry with an Uber. And I know that's quite a common example to use, but it's one that I think a lot of people can relate to. I think that, I've also been speaking to a few medical people over the last couple of weeks, and there seems to be a thought in the medical profession that a patient wants a touch, if I can put it that way. They want the touch and feel of a physical doctor. Do you think that that's the case?
Absolutely. So it depends where you are in the world. If you're in America, certain countries in Europe, the technology will be adopted much faster. In the South African setting, people still want to talk to another human being. Yeah. So I think what's going to happen more than likely is that the technology will aid in the diagnosis and more accurate diagnosis and a more accurate and standardized way of treating patients. But you'll still want your doctor to confirm, what the technology says. I also believe that more of us as doctors are going to end up becoming psychologists, right? We're going to be dealing with more and more emotional trauma and stress, and that has been borne out over the last 2 to 3 years with COVID, that, you can't just be a doctor anymore writing a prescription. You're going to have to spend time with your patients and go back to basics of understanding where they live, what do they do, what are their stresses, what are the emotional traumas that they are experiencing, and how do we shift from a model of sick care or health care to one of well-being? And well-being would encompass your financial well-being, your spiritual well-being, your health and wellness, your family's well-being, your travel, and so on. So looking at all the areas of your life and getting you to achieve that balance to stay healthy.
Absolutely, because sometimes you do feel, I mean, as a patient, sometimes you do feel that you go and you see a doctor and you leave with the script, but the script just deals with the symptom of whatever it is that you're experiencing. But in the ecosystem of your life, what's driving that symptom sometimes is something completely unrelated to the medicine, if I can put it that way. So it is phenomenal in terms of just the thinking process that you guys are looking at in terms of holistically, holistically offering these solutions. Tell me, what is your view on alternative medicine and Eastern healing and all of these sort of things that are also doing quite well in the market at the moment?
So I'm a strong believer, Sean, in I wouldn't really call it, it's been labeled alternative medicine. But it should really be referred to as functional medicine.
Right.
So remember that modern medicine trained us to become organ specialists, right? And we do really well when I'm treating your heart or an ENT is treating your nose, as an example, right? But we do very poorly when we have to treat the patient and not the organ. So, our body is made up of so many different organs, and as an organism, we are exposed to an environment or stresses in an environment that influences what happens to us. So this concept of siloing healthcare or your well-being into organ systems is something that has not worked. Right? So when we look at functional medicine looks at the process of how we age, of why we get ill in the first place. How does our environment and the stresses that we are faced with in our environment, from a lack of good nutrition or too much emotional trauma, toxins and pollutants, the pH of our body, and how does that then influence our human physiology and our genetics to be able to trigger an illness? And it's then looking at you a lot more holistically and then saying, well, what works for you? Do you need conventional medication? Do you need supplements? Do I need to adjust your diet? Do you need mindfulness techniques such as meditation and breathing techniques? And how do all the other forms of therapy that worked maybe 100 years ago and that we haven't used, how do they complement our cultural backgrounds in terms of healing us?
Absolutely. And this approach is all encompassed in the ecosystem of your solution.
Absolutely. So I've taken my sort of 22 or 23 years of experience. We've re-looked at the science of why people become ill in the first place. We then measure that science through the technology that we've developed, and then we advise an appropriate way or a more holistic way of treating patients, utilizing all the parameters that are currently available to us.
Okay. And practically, a user would get an app. Would they download an app? Would they access it via the web? And the data that gets sort of generated around the user, the patients, let's call it patients rather. The data that gets generated around the patients must also be quite insightful for you guys as an organization.
Absolutely, Sean. So, if you have high blood pressure and you go to 10 different doctors, okay, you may get a similar opinion, but you may get 10 different prescriptions, and yet there is a standardized way and an appropriate and a best practice way in terms of managing all these lifestyle diseases. So it's not necessarily that the doctor is a bad doctor, it's just that there's just so much information that we need to keep up to date with today, and that sometimes is not always possible. So for me, it's how do we take the data that's generated. A patient could be tracking or monitoring themselves at home. That data is available in a cloud, obviously securely, and the algorithms are interpreting that data and messaging or triggering the doctor to letting the doctor know when you are not controlled, right? And an earlier intervention that can happen before you develop a serious complication. So the technology, as I said, is not the answer. It's a crucial enabler, okay, to help monitor yourself and to identify the risk much earlier and then design a personalized intervention for you. So again, if you had 10 patients with hypertension, all 10 patients can't necessarily or won't have the same risk. And the intervention needs to be personalized. And it's just bringing medicine, taking everything that we know and putting it together in a much more holistic way.
And if one wanted to register for this service, they go onto your website, brandmed.com, and then can you register and get started with it immediately, or is it launched?
Yes, so it's going to be the new solution will be launched towards the middle of or at the end of this month.
Okay.
And as I said, you would be able to go onto the website and register, or to the App Store, download the app and register within the app. And as I said, it's a phenomenal way in terms of how you can monitor yourself. So you wouldn't be needing, let's say, a blood pressure cuff and an oximeter or a scale separately. All of this can now be done on your phone, utilizing the infrared portion of your camera on your phone, and literally within a minute, So we're excited and looking forward to that.
Yeah. I have to ask this question, and I ask it without offense. Have you benchmarked and tested the technology against the traditional methods of measurement that you would typically use? And has there been any variances?
Yes. So the technology has been validated internationally. Okay. So that's been done. But remember that any device, whether you use a standard blood pressure monitor or a glucometer to test your sugar, any device will have a variance. So the idea is to be able to look, it has been tested against conventional ways of monitoring yourself, and it holds up quite accurately, So it's not, if your blood pressure is 120/80 and the reading says 122/78, that's not materially going to affect any outcome in terms of your healthcare. Right? So it's used as a screening and monitoring tool, okay, to guide your next step.
Right. Okay. It's very interesting, guys. And I think that you definitely need to check out brandmed.com. I'll share information in the description, and you can get an update in terms of an appreciation for the depth of the content. I've seen it myself. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And obviously, Riaz, just over and above the everyday patient like myself and others out there, there's quite a strong opportunity for corporates to also utilize this technology from a wellness perspective, from a commercial perspective, in terms of offering clients, access to these sort of capabilities through other devices and offerings.
Yeah, so look, I think there's so many applications, Sean, as we've discussed previously. It could be used in a corporate wellness environment. It could be used in schools. It could be used for truck drivers who are driving for very long hours, and are stressed, and more than likely will cause an accident that will kill many people. It could be used in a healthcare environment by people living in old age homes or gated communities or in frail care. So it could be used in so many different settings. And, Sean, we know that on our own continent, there's just over 1 billion people. And we're never going to have enough doctors. You're never going to have enough nurses. You're never going to have enough hospitals to reach everybody. In South Africa, we are spoiled and blessed in a way that we do have access to healthcare. We may not be able to afford all of it, but people do have access to a degree. But on the rest of the continent, it's quite tough. I mean, people don't have access in many parts of the continent. And the technology allows us now to just reach so many more people, in a meaningful way and in an impactful way to prevent illness and to prevent complications.
No, true, true. And I hear you use the words API, I hear you use the word cloud, algorithm, and a host of other technical terms. When you made the decision to move into this medical technology, digital technology space, how was the learning curve for you in terms of now being a medical doctor, now getting yourself affair with technology and essentially becoming IT savvy? What was that learning curve like?
Oh, that was huge for me, Sean. When we started off, I had to learn what apps do and how to build apps and, terminology, as you say, like APIs and cloud and firewalls and all the new terminology and, logistics and importing devices and distribution. And these were all foreign terms to me as a medical doctor.
Mm.
But, as I said to you, you learn it quite quickly. And I think, my training as a cardiologist helped me in that regard. As I said to you, if you come in with a heart attack, there's no time to waste,
Yeah.
This is what I need to do, and this is what I need to do to get you better, And if you apply the same principles of what you know in all areas of your life, it's actually not that difficult,
Mm.
And the other important thing was to surround myself with people who did know. You don't have to be everything to everyone. And when you surround yourself with good people, knowledgeable people who can assist you, and you build a great team, then, that's when you can achieve the success.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also about self-belief, right? If I reverse it, and I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot and ask age and that sort of thing, but if I reverse the timeline from when you said you started BrandMed, and assuming, I don't know how old you are now, but assuming, I mean, you started BrandMed around your early 40s, would it be?
So I'm in my early 50s, so probably around the age of 46, 47.
And I mean, the point I make here is it's your age is not the point. The point is you're never too old or never too set in your ways to learn something new and start from the bottom again of learning something new to uncover your passion and reinvent yourself, because that's what you've done with BrandMed is you had this really successful career as a cardiologist, and then it was a complete reinvention. And not of the subject matter, but of yourself as a person, because now you're the CEO of a tech company, and the message that I want to get out to people is that you're never too old, you're never too, one would think, oh, I'm in my mid-40s now, or past mid-40s, I'm past that point now. But, again, it shows that if you've got the drive, you've got the determination, you've got the passion, anything is possible.
Absolutely, Sean. So I think for me, if you have passion in life, for something, and you have a strong sense of belief that, perhaps maybe failure is not an option, that you are inspired, you're passionate, it's about service to humanity, and, understanding your why is absolutely crucial. And there have been many tough times in the last 8 years in terms of thinking, well, maybe I should just go back to being a good cardiologist. And I still practice as a cardiologist, but, I've cut back on the amount of work that I do. But there were many tough times in the last 8 years where you are faced with these questions, but you understand that there's a much bigger goal, and that you're going to reach all these people that you intend to reach. And you believe in yourself, you believe in your team, and you do achieve your goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this concept of perseverance, and it's exactly what you've said. If the why is strong enough, the perseverance will be there. And if the why is generally what I find is if the why is financially driven or materially driven, it's not strong enough. It has to have more substance to that. And I think your approach of wanting to touch 1 million patients a day, I mean, that is a massive that's a massive why.
Yeah, and I also think, in the process of, we will always be doing something, Sean. But in that process of doing, how do you have fun?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
with what you're doing, sometimes we get sidetracked by all the nitty-gritty stuff and the challenges that we face every day, that we fail to have fun along the way and
Yeah.
experience the joy, right? And it's been tough, but as I said to you, you hopefully my maturity and my background and training and everything sets you up for that. I could not have done this when I was 30 years old.
Mm.
I mean, I would have had many, many challenges at that age in my life. Now, some people are able to do that at a younger age, but, as I said, you're never ever too old to be able to come up with an idea, build that idea out and create value and spread that love with everybody that you intend to.
And you don't also want to get to the finish line too quickly, because the journey is almost more beautiful than the destination. Sometimes when you get to the destination and you get to the end, it can be a bit anticlimactic. So I think that for a lot of people, just enjoying the journey that you're on, not only the journey of work, because I'm a believer in the philosophy of one life. You've got this life, enjoy it. There's no such thing as a good experience, and there's no such thing as a bad experience. It's just learnings, whether it be make you feel negative or make you feel positive. It's just an emotion, it's an experience, but enjoy whatever comes along, because before you know it, you snap your fingers and it's over.
Absolutely. Sean, and this, as I said, without sounding too cynical about it, but, having spent so many years with so many people very sick in hospital, in ICU, on their deathbed, and, people have regrets about their life, that they should have done something differently, and for me, you're right, we have this one life. It's never too late, okay, and it's not about building a big company or doing something big. It's really around asking one or two very key questions of your life. Firstly, to let go of all the self-judgment of yourself, that I don't look good enough, or I'm not beautiful enough, or I'm overweight, or my family background prohibits me, or my color of my skin limits me, and all these self-limiting issues that we have about ourselves. We are truly tough and very judgmental on ourselves. And I think the day you can let go of that judgment of yourself and understand that you are absolutely perfect just the way that you are, right, allows you to move forward in the first place. The second major thing is that never ever give up. You have an idea and you think, I don't have money, where will I find the investment? And you're already starting from a limiting belief system. Okay. So South Africans are different. I think we are resourceful and we achieve greatness, or achieve good things in our lives. But, start something, start it small and see where it takes you. And I've had, through this interaction of starting this digital health company, have had the opportunity of traveling around the world and of meeting so many amazing people from all walks of life, from so many different countries. And it's the human interaction that is absolutely crucial. It's not the technology, it's not the device, and so on. Ultimately, we all crave human interaction and relationship. And if you can bring that into your business and understand your why and how you are going to be impacting humanity in a much broader way, then you're going to have the fun along the way and you're going to remain inspired.
Yeah, we've run out of time, but what a conclusion. I mean, guys, I'm going to definitely, once we've released this, listen to that last 3 or 4 minutes again, because there are so many pearls of wisdom. I'm not even going to try and regurgitate it. But Dr. Motara, we've run out of time. What a way to end it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for making the opportunity available to us to spend this time with you and your life advice, and congratulations on everything that you've achieved in your life. You're an inspiration to myself and I'm sure to everyone who's going to listen to this. So thank you so much for being with us on the Higher Living podcast.
Thank you so much, Sean. And, thank you for creating a platform, for all of us to share, what we're busy with and what we're doing. I mean, it's truly inspirational as well.
Thank you, Riaz. Guys, we've come to the end of the show. As usual, we've flown through it. It's a Thursday afternoon. We're heading off to the weekend. Guys, if you remember one thing, remember to do one thing only, and that is stay inspired. Cheers.